Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining. I'm very happy today to have with me T. Susan Chang. I'm very curious about what the T stands for. I mean, if you wanted to say what it
Everybody
is, you
wants to know
can.
about the tea. The Susan Chang.
There we
No,
go.
no, no, no. It's my Chinese name. It's which is Tsefeng, and it's hard to say. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce it. I'm not entirely sure what it means. There's a 5,000 Susan Changs out there, so I just use the T to kind of disambiguate and make sure
Right.
everyone knows is me. That's all.
I was thinking that it could probably mean that it was your Chinese name. And well, now the
Yeah.
curiosity is, what does it mean?
Well, it does mean, it means, gosh, well, it's interesting. It's the first part of it, the te part of it is a prefix that was handed down in a poem, an ancestral poem in my family. Each generation takes a separate character, which is common in China. But anyway, mine means it's something like something fragrant in that's growing in like a swamp or a marsh or something like that. Yeah, I don't know.
Kind of like a lotus or something.
Yes, a lotus or a camellia or an orchid, or, I've seen
Right.
different kinds of
Mm.
translations.
Well, names
Very
are
floral.
important. They carry a
They
lot of
are.
energy, and they are even uh, kind of they carry, how to say it, like information about who you will be, right?
Yes,
They're
that's
kind of
exactly
divinatory in
right.
a way.
And I never really understood that, but about five, no, I don't know, less than that, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I do many, many different things. I have a lot of different practices, but one of the ones that developed late in my life or midlife is making perfume. So
Mm.
this idea of the fragrant, something growing in this place, suddenly had some kind of metaphorical traction, which it never had before to me, which
Mm.
was interesting.
Yeah, really. For me, for example, my name is Rafael, which is
Hmm.
the archangel that is
The
connected
archangel.
to
Yeah.
healing. And yeah, and
Yes.
part of my path has been uh, growing into my role as a healer. So using music and sound in particular, but also with helping raise consciousness and teaching meditation and those kinds of things. And yeah, I never would have thought that
Who
that I
knew?
would. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you have a particular practice with the archangel Raphael?
Perhaps not very specific
Mm-hmm.
as a regular thing like daily or something like that. But every now and then I will connect with either archangels or it's very very sensed or intuitive for me. So like
Mm-hmm.
if I feel like connection with the idea of protection, I'll go with Michael. um,
Yes.
but if
Yes.
I feel like connect, like for example, one of my most regular practices is chanting mantra, and in mantra I'm very connected with Krishna. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll chant the
Mm-hmm.
Hare Krishna mantra. um, but if I want to perhaps connect with more with abundance, I'll go with Lakshmi.
Yes.
Yeah, and for
Yes.
healing and for love, I will sometimes call on Archangel Raphael. Yeah.
Yeah. And I noticed you have as part of your handle Atman. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, yeah. So that I suppose is part of that whole interest in Vedic mythology that you have.
yes, I do.
Mhm.
Um, I sense, again, very intuitively. I feel very connected, and if you could say it in another way, I feel like an affinity, and the metaphors from Vedanta, and
Mhm.
they 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 ring a bell for me. Some would say,
Mhm.
okay, maybe I was a Hindu in a past life, so in this one I hear the
Maybe.
the teachings, and they wake up. They were asleep perhaps in me, and are awakened from another life. Who knows?
Who knows? I feel the same way about ancient Greek, which I've been,
Mm,
involved with since I was like 18, and I don't have any heritage there.
mm.
It's just something I'm drawn to. Yeah.
Yeah, a kind of soul
Yeah.
heritage.
Yeah.
For me also, one of my last names, I've recently started digging into it a little, and it seems that it's probably from Greece. uh,
Hmm.
and recently around that time I also started like unlocking the language of both tarot but also of astrology, and
Mhm.
the connection with the Greek gods has been like a very
Yes.
important part in recent years for me.
Yes. Yes, that
Mm,
makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
mm. And for you, I know. So you said that you work on or explore many different parts of all the esoteric arts, um, and you said that you particularly focus on tarot.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yes, that's
Tell us a
right.
little
So,
about your views on all that.
well, so tarot has been with me for many years now. I think I have been practicing tarot for probably 25 years now, I think, but on and off, you know. I mean, I started as a kid and I was really, I just sort of saw it in, I had a roommate who was doing tarot
Mm,
down the hall in my college. And, you know, and it, as a person who was really brought up to be strictly rational, you know, someone who is very much of the modern age scientific mindset, I I was fascinated and bewildered
mm,
by this, you know, giving your sense of agency and free will up to these cards as I saw it. I, you know, I've come a long way since then, but yeah, and I thought, well, you know, that's not for me. But maybe someday I'll have a look at it. And then, you know, as you get older, so I was, I guess, in my 20s by the time I kind of had the nerve to do things that I was scared of
mm,
doing. And tarot was one of them. I spent many years in New York at that time. I was working as an editor, and I just explored a lot of different things that I was interested in at the time. Like I was doing a lot of ballroom dancing.
mm,
I was learning to play the saxophone, and I was learning tarot, you know, because why not? And I was just really taken with it, you know. It was something that I've had a couple of careers since then, actually. You know, I worked for the as an editor for 10 years, and then I was a food writer for another 10 years. And but through it all, tarot has been with me. And I think it's because I knew there was something in there that I just couldn't get enough of, you know? The idea that there's a layer, there's something beneath the reality that we all live in, that and that tarot has a way of expressing that. Some way of allowing us to visit that dream world or that archetypal world just beneath the surface and to actually work with it. That's fascinating to me, somewhat like dreams themselves, you know, that there's a language, there's a visual kind of conversation that goes on between you and the cards, and that it can change your life. As far as the sort of what you can do with tarot goes, you know, I kind of started like everybody else. Well, you know, maybe I can get some insight into my own life. You know, cute guy I'm interested in.
mm.
Does he like me? You know, a lot of does he like me for many, many years at the beginning. And when I was reading, right at the beginning, I started reading for people too. And uh, I was, because I was living in New York in the theater district, you know, people had crazy lives
Mm,
there. So, you know, I would just take out my cards and sit in a cafe and read for people. And oh, the lives that they had and the things that they did. And the, you know, it was just really interesting. So yeah, so I decided that, um, that I could do this for myself as well. And one of the things I've learned over the years, um, since becoming more serious about tarot, is that tarot is a key to unlocking many doors. And one of the ways I like to talk about tarot is as a way of going backstage. So by
mm,
backstage, I mean, you know, if it's a theater metaphor, it's as if you're behind the curtain and you get to see how things work. So in divination, what we do is we can go backstage and see, you know, we can get information, we can find out things that we might not otherwise know. Whereas as magicians, which is another side of that practice, we change things. We have the opportunity to alter what's going on in front of the curtain. So to me, that's really, really interesting. And, you know, and tarot's my way of doing that. It's just one way in. Many ways to do it, but that's my way in.
mm. I remember Terence McKenna. I don't know if you know about him. He said the world is made of language, and this is, I think,
Mm.
what you're alluding to. How there is some kind of, we might call it underlying, but perhaps it's, I don't know what the best metaphor would be. Maybe it's on top, or maybe it's behind, like
Yes.
you were saying with a curtain, eh, or
Yes.
or or it's like kind of like all around it, like a bubble or something. We are inside of a code, of a matrix, of something like that. There's many different connotations depending on the words one uses to describe it.
Hmm.
There's this idea in Vedanta of Maya. The
Hmm.
uh,
The
the
illusion
Gnost-
of the world.
the
Hmm.
Gnostics might look at it perhaps in a kind of more darker way, perhaps. Uh, the I think they call it something like the Iron Prison or something like that.
Right. Right.
But at the same time, you could also look at it from an even another perspective, and understand that you've come here to fulfill some mission. So it's just as good as anything else. This this on stage that we are in,
Hmm.
and having the possibility of reading those energies that manifest in form, having the
Hmm.
chance to read those energies through symbols, through perhaps even through chants, and learning. I think that those are kind of elements within, for example, tarot, right? You will
Yes.
use randomness in a way, because what cards are going to come out, nobody knows, but a particular symbol comes up. So it's kind of some sort of gravity that pulls
Hmm.
this card instead of that one, or something like that. And that gives you a reading of the current energies, or something like that.
Something like that, yes. And I think that, it's particularly human in a way to work with symbol and representation like that. It's something that we're special in that way. And I think that in systems of divination, or even in cosmological systems like astrology, um, we always have this assumption that that there's a correspondence between what's out there and what's in here, as you're saying, the backstage and the front stage.
Mhm,
And as above so below,
mhm,
as without so within. So if we can learn to speak that language, then we get to not only communicate with that larger structure that we're part of, but change it. you know and and I think that that's fascinating. I mean, the idea that we can, simply um, by creating, by working with symbols, by working with images, by working with sound, by working with any kind of art, really, music included,
mhm.
we have a conversation with the unseen at all times. And why would anyone want to do anything else in life? you know I mean, I'm sure you feel this as a musician. When when you're making music, you're more alive than at any other time. Yes.
Yeah, you're more present. You're right
Yes.
here, right now. You're you're not thinking. I mean, I get to these states of like, that are hard to put into words, because they are like exactly like behind the code or something.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, these states that it's kind of like the ego goes away,
Yes.
and stops naming things,
The lark.
and
Yeah.
taking uh, yeah, pushing its opinion on everything, or bathing
Mm-hmm.
everything with its color or whatever. And you're
Yes.
like in a play in you're in the observer of everything, without
Mm-hmm.
any judgment, without anything like that. And I remember specific times when playing, I used to play bass, when playing, that I would suddenly come back.
Yes.
It's like,
Yes.
like when you go to sleep, you kind of don't know when you fell asleep, but suddenly you're awake, or
Yes.
suddenly you are awake in a dream or whatever.
Yes.
And kind of those type of experiences, when I would become awake, or I would, or yeah, maybe the ego comes back online or something,
Mm-hmm.
and it suddenly is like, oh wow, I've been playing all that. Wow, I didn't know I could play like that.
Yes, yes, that's right. I mean, I was also a musician when I was young. I was a
Mm,
classical musician for many years, and I was professionally trained. And I know that feeling where you're not fully. It's not you in control, right? It's the
mm,
music plays you, right? And I think that that's a metaphor I find very interesting, because I think that, one way of talking about this human experience we're in is to say that it's a dream, but who's the dreamer and who is the dream, right? It's there's no point in separating the two, because it's all one thing, right?
mm,
We're all part of it. We're all expressions of the same cosmic dream. So yeah, and one thing that I think about a lot is yeah, that what the mind does, the way the mind interferes,
mm,
with with our ability to participate fully in that dream. I think that that's something, especially those of us who have been brought up in the Western world, really struggle with. The rational mind is constantly creating cages and and formulas and structures and architectures that separate us from the true world. And one thing that I think divination does, and specifically sortilege. So sortilege is any form of divination that involves randomness, right? So whether it's cards or throwing bones or dice or eaching sticks, um, the what sortilege does is it creates chaos. And I think one of my theories is that chaos is there for the mind to get confused by, right? The rational mind has to go like, you know, uh, look at this disorder, and it just checks out. It's
mm,
like I can't even deal with that, and allowing for some kind of more real truth to surface.
mm,
And that's something that I've often thought about, that in the same way that we say that, to be brave, to be courageous is not to lack fear, but it's to be in the presence of fear and still act. Yeah. So to me, the kind of belief that we have when we do divination is not because we don't doubt that this can happen. It's not because we're free from doubt. It's because in the presence of doubt, and uncertainty, we stand up and we say, okay, I believe, you know, despite everything. And to me, that's beautiful.
mm. It's like,
Yeah.
seems like what is chaos for the mind is is harmony for God
Maybe
or
so.
something like
Maybe
that.
so. I mean, to me, that is. Um, there's a really wonderful analogy. I was just reading. I'm reading a lot of Jung right now, and I know you
Mm,
also enjoy Jung, um, for this talk I'm going to give in March. And there's a sort of a model of what's going on in divination that's very interesting,
mm,
where where you have like the wheel of eternal time, right? That that exists in the cosmos, and then you have our wheel of time, which is linear, which is has causes, which has effects, and which only goes from the past to the future. It's its own thing. And the act of divination, or any kind of synchronicity or meaningful coincidence, is where those two wheels intersect, right in the center there. And to me, there's this moment in divination where you say time doesn't matter. My idea of what I needed to do yesterday, or what I need to do tomorrow, or how I'm going to achieve this goal that I have written down, none of that matters. you know my my aim right now is to participate in this breathing hole between these two versions of time, and to do divination or magic there, or to have a conversation there in that one place, which is why I wear this. This is kind of a
mm,
representation of that. Yeah.
mm. And what is I don't know if I completely got, you say there's this kind of trend going on in divination nowadays.
Oh, well, let's see. I mean, I tend to, I don't know if I'm the best person to comment on what trends are going on in divination, except to say that I think maybe there is, I think in the mainstream there's more of an openness to these
Hmm.
modalities, maybe beginning to be. I don't know. I often think that, when I think about these sort of larger waves, it's almost like to a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and that's me. To a diviner, everything looks like, I think everybody should read tarot. I think everybody should do divination. I think everybody should do magic. So who am I to say? I don't know if we're in a moment like we were in the 60s or 70s, for example, when, things really opened up and people became more open to
Mm.
Eastern ways of thinking and to larger psychedelic experiences. But I think we are in something of a moment. I can say for sure that the astrologers are having a moment. I don't know about the tarot readers, but the
Mm.
astrologers are definitely having a moment. Both in terms, there's a really wonderful convergence going on there where there's been fantastic scholarship that's been coming online for the last 10 years, where people are doing translations and reviving old texts um, and revisiting and republishing them. But also, there's a whole generation of 20 and 30-year-olds who are fascinated by astrology and doing really
Mm.
interesting, explorations of the art. So tarot is its own thing, really. I mean, tarot is you know I don't know if it's because tarot is such a personal thing. I mean, you look at an astrological chart, it's just there. Everybody can say on, what the skies are going to look like on December 19th,
Mm.
2025, right? You can just look it up. But tarot is subjective. It's like
Mm.
if I sit down with you, Rafa, for a reading, then it's going to be just personal for your needs, for your
Mm.
situation, your problems, hopefully some answers for you. So, it's so I think that with tarot, it's um it's it's almost like when I look around at the tarot community, we each have this very special kind of treasure, which is our tarot practice. And it's harder to generalize, from my point of view, into a movement.
Mm. Well, I see tarot kind of being, um, I don't know the best way to put it, but being a kind of uh, a larger thing in that you could you can associate astrological archetypes to the tarot,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know how. I mean, you could still do them the other way around, but
Yes.
it's more like tarot contains astrology in some kind of way for me.
Yes, yes. I mean, I think that, you can say that all systems contain all other systems in a
Hmm.
way. But here, I'm going to plug my book for a second. So,
Sure.
so this is the new one. This is 36 Secrets, and this is a very astrological book.
Mm.
Um, it is really about the minor arcana of the tarot, which are actually, I'm going to hold it up close so you can see it. It might be too bright. So at the bottom here, you can see these images that are taken from the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot deck, and all from the minor cards. And they're just sort of dancing across the bottom there, because this is specifically about the minor cards that are numbered 2 through 10 in each deck. So there are 36 of those, and each of those has an astrological correspondence. So what I did with this book is I did what's known as a Decan walk in astrological circles, which is, you start on the spring equinox, March 21st, and every 10 days, what you're doing is you're looking at that moment, in astrological time, and trying to sense the quality of it. So Aries 1, March 21st to March 30th or whatever, is, this time of sort of rising up and gathering of energies and, breaking the soil. And so what I did was I tried to figure out, oh, and that's the Two of Wands in tarot.
Mm.
So what I tried to do was figure out the connections between those two um, for for a year. So every 10 days, I would write a blog post on that card and that deck and try and draw connections. And then I finished. I finished in March of 2020 when we were all going into lockdown. So it seemed like the perfect time to kind of just put it all together into a
Mm.
book and see if there was some way to share it with the world, which I'm really glad I did, because this is a very special book to me.
Yeah, I can imagine it's probably an amazing book.
It's
Do,
very personal.
uh,
Yeah.
did you find any kind of pattern in like, I mean, I don't think they go linearly, like, oh, then it's the three of one, the four of ones, probably
Well,
not.
yes, all sort of, yes. So it's sort of like it goes Two of Wands, Three of Wands, Four of Wands. Those are Aries. But
Mm.
then in order to go to Taurus, you have to skip not
Mm.
so Wands are fiery. Aries is a fire sign. Taurus is an earth sign. So you skip to the suit of earth, which is Pentacles. So, or discs or coins, whatever you want to call it. So you skip for Taurus, you're in 5, 6, and 7 of Pentacles or coins.
Mm.
And then you're in Gemini, which is air. So you're in the 8, 9, and 10 of swords, which terrifies everybody, but they're really not so bad. So yeah, so to me that was really a deep dive into into learning and living through what that might be like, because my previous book, which is called Tarot Correspondences, this is from 2018, this just sort of sets out all the systems. It's literally like 100 tables and charts.
Pretty big book.
Yeah, it's really for it's to understand that system and how it works in tarot, because this is a system that developed in 1909 around the publication of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, and the secret society that arose from the Golden Dawn was the one that set up those astrological
Mhm.
correspondences, those elemental correspondences, those tree of life Kabbalistic correspondences. And that's what I specialize in. There have been previous esoteric correspondence systems before that, but this is the one that we use in the modern era. And a lot of people don't like it, but to me, it's very interesting. It's just another way of superimposing another layer of meaning onto the cards.
Mm.
And I don't at all discredit anybody who just wants to read intuitively and just say, look at the picture and see what the picture says, because that's completely valid. And it's, to me though, this is a language that's just waiting to be taken and used, so I use it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely something that is different from the kind of language, the more alphabetical languages we use.
Mm-hmm.
In that those languages we generally use, the one we are speaking right now, they try intentionally or by definition to be very close and very specific, and
Mm-hmm.
and still there are sometimes confusions and double entendres and all of that. But
Mm-hmm.
whereas stuff like these esoteric arts like tarot and stuff, they intentionally try to be more, perhaps more broad, or I don't know what the word is, unspecific,
I think
more
that's fair. I
in
think that's fair.
in a way so that you can read the cards, you know uh, with your own interpretation, and it's still valid, whereas somebody else might read it a little bit different, or
And
maybe
it's still valid. Yeah.
exactly, and maybe they would make a bigger emphasis perhaps on, oh no, look, it's a prince, so this means something, but perhaps for
Right.
you the same card, oh look, there's a desert, or something like that,
Yes.
or
Yes.
it's
Yes,
connected
that's
to
right.
this astrological symbol, and you would still get, because that's also interesting how in a reading,
Mm-hmm.
again, it's not something out of the blue, it's a very contextual thing. So if I'm taking a reading from you,
Mm-hmm.
uh, it's it's in, uh, it's important for the reading your point of view. I mean, if I
Yes.
you
Yes.
know, the kind of reading that you would give in a way is kind of the energy that, or the information I need at that moment. And that's why the universe would take me to make a reading with you rather than to another person,
Yes,
perhaps.
exactly, exactly. And and it's the I think that that's something you're really onto there, because every reader will read differently, every card will read differently, and at every different time for every different
Mhm.
person it'll read differently. But what the systems do is they provide us with kind of a reservoir for building meaning, and the meaning is not fixed. Each of these sort of systems that we talk about, whether it's the 78 cards of the tarot, or the 12 signs of the zodiac, or the 36 decans of or the four elements, or whatever it is, each of those is comprehensive, right? It's each of them is a way of looking at the world that is complete and of itself. So when you put them together, I like to think that you don't just get, where they intersect, the small area where they intersect, but you add everything together. So
Mm.
to me, let me see, just take a look. Okay, look, I just got the Wheel of Fortune, which is one
Mm.
of my, this is actually my favorite card. I'm not supposed to have favorites, but it's actually my favorite card. So, so this can mean a lot of different things. It can mean that it can mean it's associated with the planet Jupiter. It can have to do with fate, because it's literally the Wheel of Fortune. It can have to do with time and the way that time elapses. It can have to do with luck. It can have to do with not being able to stop things, right? Because the wheel is always turning. And it can have to do with fame as well, because people rise to the top of the wheel. It can have to do with karma. Um, and but in the context of the reading, it will become clear what it needs to be, and I don't necessarily know until I have the context of the reading. I have the circumstance, and I have the need of the person. I believe that what comes out in a reading arises in the relationship between
Mm.
the reader and the person who's read for. And so any card can mean any number of things, like, death card, which we all, have feelings about, can mean surrender, or it can mean beginnings and endings. It can mean, it can mean the transformation of the soul. It can mean sunset, because that's on the card too. What it probably doesn't mean
Mm.
is stagnancy. It probably doesn't mean things are staying the same forever, right? So every card has an infinite number of meanings, but at the
Mm.
same time, it can't mean everything.
I think this circles back again to Jung. His
Mm-hmm.
idea, I think it was of the differentiation he makes between, I think it's signs and symbols. So
Mm-hmm.
like signs have one meaning, like the stop sign in the
Yes.
street, whereas
Yeah.
symbols require interpretation from the person looking at it. And I in Jungian what you call it, in Jungian therapy, there's this thing called the sandbox. Do you know about that?
No, I don't think so.
So they use, there's this big sandbox,
Mm-hmm.
literal
Oh, a
physical sandbox.
sandbox. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah. Do you know about it? No.
No, still not.
Okay, sure. I'll tell. I'll tell you. There's a sandbox. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so it's literally a box with sand in it, and you
Mm-hmm.
can. So the therapist will tell you, okay, so go ahead and do whatever you want. And so you're
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a child playing with sand. You can drop pour water on it, and you can make it
Mm-hmm.
a little bit more like to construct things or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But you can just so work with the sand and move it. And there's this extra thing that you this is I'm talking particularly from a therapist that I went to. um,
Yeah.
she had lots of toys, so
Mm-hmm.
like action figures and stuff like that,
Yeah.
that they are very representative of different archetypes. So lots and lots and lots so you had things that could be more like Egyptian, then you would
Mm-hmm.
have things that are more like like the family, then you have more like mythological creatures and heroes and gods and stuff like that, and whatever in between, nature, animals, more indigenous things, so all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, and you would grab all these figurines, and place them on the sand that you were also
Mm-hmm.
working with,
Mm-hmm.
and you have like an experience with that, and the therapist is
Yes.
just watching and seeing, oh, maybe I don't know exactly what they are looking at, but they're probably looking at what you put first and where you place
Yes.
things, which one perhaps represents you, and how they are in relationship with other stuff. And it's kind of a
Fascinating.
tarot reading in a way,
It absolutely is.
or
It
a
absolutely is.
divination or
Did,
something.
did you actually do this?
Yeah, a few times.
Yeah. So
Very
I
interesting.
want to know, what's the first figure that you picked up? Do you remember?
Which was, I did it like, it's also interesting to kind of see the progression. I
Mm-hmm.
think, wow, the first one that I used, I think the first one that I used was kind of like a hero, like a knight, that I think it was
Mm-hmm.
me.
Yeah.
And there
Yeah.
was this
Yeah.
knight and a kind of warrior princess also, and there's
Mm-hmm.
this kind of, I think it was a dragon, and this was
Mm-hmm.
kind of in the center, but I do not
Yeah.
remembering exactly that one.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but it was very interesting how, like, first I would be very very reluctant to like show myself, right? So I would
Mm-hmm.
like start moving a little bit of the sand and trying not to give away my hand in a way.
Yes.
And
Yes.
also when you move the sand, it the bottom of the box is light blue, so it's like water, so you're creating
Mm,
land masses and water. So again, we have the elements at play there, and it's 3D, so
yes.
you can go around it and yeah, and see
Yeah.
what it
Oh,
represents
that's
in different,
fascinating.
yeah.
Well, it's interesting that you were hesitant at first to,
Mm,
to make a move, because I think that in a way that's what we're like, as human beings, right? We're afraid to make a story out of our
mm,
lives, and I think that that's one reason that culturally we feel as though we're starved for meaning, right? We feel as though we're just adrift in this, in this sea of undifferentiated potential stories, not knowing what our own legend is going to be.
mm,
And to me, one of the things that tarot is good for, and divination and magic, is to reclaim that story and to decide, you know, to decide, this is what my story is going to be and how I'm going to tell it. This is where the beginning is, and this is where the end is. And to take over that heroic journey using the language of the cards. And to me, one of the things I did this last year was kind of break down the stories that you can see in tarot into elements.
mm,
So, there's a story of fire, there's a story of water, there's a story of air, and there's a story of earth. And, for me, it's fascinating to just sort of navigate between those. To me, the story of fire is the classic hero's adventure, right? Where you have ambitions, and then you go and conquer dragons, and then everyone talks about you after you're dead. That's the story of fire. But the story of water is a story of the heart, where there are secrets and desire and surrender and things you would do anything for, whether it's magic or love or whatever it is. Um, and that your goal is to get beyond the things of this ordinary world into the magical realm. And then the story of air is the story of knowledge and its price. The idea that we all want to know things, and that and we all suffer for it. It's the original sin in the Garden of Eden. We
mm,
just wanted to know, and then we got kicked out. Um, and then the story of Earth has to do with the things that you
mm,
build in this life, the things that you make, and then what you are willing to hand down physically to your, whether it's your children or to your listeners or to your readers, or whoever it is that the story passes on to. So yeah, it's interesting.
mm, that's beautiful, those
Right?
archetypal stories.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and we're all living them. We're not willing to just step up and say,
Mm.
I'm the hero.
Yeah. We're probably living all of them at the same time, right?
Yeah,
Mm.
sure, sure.
Mm.
Maybe sometimes some stories more than others.
Yeah, perhaps in connection to your analysis of the minor arcana, perhaps during those times,
Hmm.
certain aspects of
Yes.
stories tend to be more present, I guess.
Well, one thing I can certainly tell you is, something, for example, something that everyone experiences at the end of the year. The end of the year, we have a transition the
Mm.
from Sagittarius to Capricorn, right? And that is an archetypically fantastic transition because we're going from, that moment of the winter solstice, right? Where, well, depends which hemisphere you're in, of course, right?
Mm.
But this moment where the days from sort of shortening in length become longer in length, or vice versa, right? So there's a change in the quality of the light, and we go from this moment of the 10 of wands, which is sort of the end of this huge adventure story,
Mm.
to restarting it with the 2 of pentacles, which I haven't actually taken out, but it's, which is a story of starting the engines going again in a material way. So when anyone makes a New Year's resolution, for example, I'm going to lose 15 pounds,
Mm.
I'm going to put out an album this year, whatever it is. When you make a resolution, that is tapping into that transition from the 10 of wands to the 2 of pentacles,
Mm.
and setting those goals, which is very, very interesting.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible when you're on this journey and starting to see how much this mm, the energy. I mean, there's still no words for to speak very clearly of this, and maybe that's okay. But
Mhm.
how, or even putting it in another way, starting to see how matter is so much conditioned by energy. So
Mhm. Mhm.
how we tend to think before, we tend to think that matter is, well, the only thing that there is. But then we understand a little bit about energy and we say, oh, okay, so I'm going to do something material to affect the energies. And then you start understanding how there's also this other, it's kind of a two-way street in a way, but
Mhm.
also how energy affects matter.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
all these divinations and all of this, we are reading the energy that is going to perhaps affect matter. We are kind of
Mhm.
reading it beforehand in a way,
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
so as to be prepared in how we can ride that wave.
Yes, I think that's true. And I think that one of the things that you can ascertain from divination is not necessarily always the specific thing that's going to happen. Like, let's see. So here's a 3 of pentacles. So, I might see this and it might be like, you know, it might not necessarily be that I'm going to see 2 other people and work with them in exactly this way, right? Where I'm standing on a bench and they're telling me what to do. But it could be that I am, I start a contract or a collaboration
Mm.
with a larger company. It could be that I, you know, go into my kitchen and make 3 loaves of bread. you know, it could be it could be that I start on a 3 book deal with somebody. It's like there's no necessarily specific way that it's going to
Mm.
come out, but the quality of the moment is real.
Mm.
And to me, that's, when you talk about energy and matter, matter is the specific instance,
Mm.
energy is the quality of it. And
Mm.
that's something that we get to find and work with. And I also believe change if we need to. That's magic. That's arguing back in the language of symbol.
Mm.
And saying, this is how I'd like this to turn out. But at the same time, I don't think you can ever, even with magic, which is very much a way of trying to get around the rules. I think that you never get to dictate the outcome. It's divination and magic are games, right? And you have to enter into them in the spirit of play, of serious play, so that, then Jung talks about this in his lecture on synchronicity, that you play with all your heart, with all your sincerity, but you accept whatever happens.
Mm.
There has to be room for the magic to unfold in whatever way it's going to unfold. There has to be room for archetypal drift.
Mm.
So,
Room for faith.
room for faith.
Mm.
Exactly. Yes.
Like thinking, so there's this energy reading, and then I'm going to play in whatever way I best, to the best of my ability.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to let go, because I will
Yes.
have faith that, on the one hand, that I've played to the best of my ability, so I've
Mm-hmm.
fulfilled my role. So the consequences of that will be the best, and also, not only that I acted in the best of my ability, but also that the, that well, I think I said both things. The other thing is, like, there will be a return from the universe that is,
Yes.
equal, or the idea of the, uh, what's it called, the cause and effect. So the
Yes.
as far as
Yes.
you do your best, whatever comes next, even if it doesn't look, like what you want, even if
Mm-hmm.
it's like totally what you don't want, you can have that faith that it's a step towards, reaping whatever you sowed.
Yes, and what you are meant to be, right?
Mm.
I mean, the thing is that, and I think this is true for musicians in particular, you experience this very directly, is that you are not just you when you're playing, right? You are an expression of the what the universe wants to say. You're only a vessel at the time. So if you screw up, it's not really your fault, right? Because you offer the opportunity for the universe to express itself. And then it expresses itself through you. And if you are doing your job, then you just kind of get out of the way.
Mm.
I feel like that's true doing oracular work as well. Most of it is me getting out of the way.
Mm.
And so, if somebody says, wow, you're a really fantastic
Mm.
tarot reader, that's to me, I can't really accept that compliment because I was just getting myself out of the way for a message that needed to get through to
I think
somebody.
you used the word play, and
Hmm.
I was, before that, I was thinking of the word art. I said the
Yes.
esoteric arts, but it feels so much like an art, because there is technique, and that's where they can say, "Oh, you're a great reader."
Right.
uh,
Right.
but
Right.
also there is this thing, this other, because it's, again, the language, it's not a scientific language, it's more an artistic language of symbols, and more
Hmm.
open. and
Hmm.
and you can have your technique, but then
Hmm.
there's this thing, this unknown, that flows through, and there, it's not something that you do, it's not something that, oh, I'm such a good channel because I'm so good at letting things happen through
Right.
me.
Right.
It's more
Right.
like something you don't do, in a way.
It's something you don't do.
Mm.
Yes.
I,
Yeah. And
I see, sorry to interrupt, but
yeah,
just
no, no.
another thing. I see the mind very much as being a filter, or a set of filters.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so being uh, a good, letting this flow come through naturally implies, relaxing those filters as much as possible.
Hmm.
But again, it's not something that we really, I don't think it's something that we really do consciously.
Yeah, and while letting whatever comes through use the skills that you've developed, right? I mean, I think to with the musical metaphor, you practice your chords, you practice your scales, and then you forget about them and let whatever comes through use them on its way. And I think that's true. I mean, I think I spend a lot of time studying the cards and trying to figure out what they might mean, and I have databases of data, just it, that tell me how it's come through in the past. And I study these because it's about building the vocabulary and the dictionary, the lexicon of meaning. But in the moment, I just make that available. And hopefully what needs to come up comes up.
Yeah, I think I'm not a reader, but I, I'm intuitive, and I can, like,
Mhm.
sometimes perhaps through whatever, make some
Mhm.
kind of a reading. Uh,
Yes.
you
Yes.
interpret, you you just, yeah, I kind of lost my thought, but you kind of just let, again, you just let whatever information is coming to just be expressed through you.
Mhm.
And yeah, I don't know that I have a way that I do that. I just, I'm present for it sometimes, luckily.
Yes, I totally agree. And actually, I believe that divination is something that you don't need cards for. I don't think you should have to, in theory, need particular tools for divination or magic. I often, I go out in the woods a lot because I have a beautiful property out back of my house. And I'll go out there and I will just sit and look at the clouds. And to me, theoretically, if in the right frame of mind, I should be able to do divination just looking at those clouds or looking at the ants crawling over the trees, because we're all part of the same expression of the moment. And one of the things that I've been reading about in Jung is that you don't necessarily have to say this thing led to that thing is to let that thing. We're all parts of the same whole. And if you examine one part, that will give you a truth about the whole. So doesn't matter if I use cards, doesn't matter if I look at clouds. I've done magic using leaves and sticks. You know, it's a frame of mind, and in theory, all of it should work.
Yeah, the holographic nature of reality. Sometimes
Yeah.
I've felt like like um, you can make like ritual,
Mm-hmm.
more than the act itself. It's the state you get into when
Yes.
you're doing it, which is more a sensitive state, or sensible to the energy, and you're more energy than particle, more energy
Yes.
than matter,
Yes.
and
Yes.
you're in a state where you've definitely have had the experience of recognizing how, perhaps not in the moment, but after, you look at the experience and you say, well, my mind wasn't perhaps as present or as judgmental. And
Mm-hmm.
it's in a way like that thing that happened, that I talked about, what happened to me with music, of not being uh, the ego not being as present or as in charge of the situation. uh,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
and you do a ritual, and you get into a magical state. I think, there's
Yes.
this idea that I'm kind of working out, and I don't know really how to express it very well, or perhaps, no, I'm not going to judge it before I say it, but I'm still learning how to put it into words. But I feel like within each of us there's two, perhaps more, but two personalities
Mm-hmm.
working at the same time. one
Yeah.
is one is more this letting go, and the other one is more like action. So perhaps it's like water and fire or something.
Yes. Yes.
and
Yes.
and uh, many times we are so focused on the ego and the personality, I think they call it the false identity,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which is like myself, my story, my name, my past, my my likes and dislikes and whatever. But then there's this other thing that is perhaps my soul,
Mm-hmm.
my atman, uh,
Mm-hmm.
which which has a more direct or unfiltered connection to the source.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, perhaps when doing ritual and getting into a certain magical state, you are letting uh, the ego take the back seat in a way,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
allowing for the other part, which is hard to express when we are in the ego, because it's a part
Yes,
that is totally the
because the ego holds the
complementary.
words.
Exactly, right. And this
Yeah,
part works exactly.
yeah,
It
yeah.
works with symbols, and it's a more artistic part of us, intuitive, exactly. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I think that there's this play between these two aspects of ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
which is shifting, and that's perhaps
Yes.
what you see, that there's more of an interest in astrology and all of this, because
Mm-hmm.
there is being a shift. Perhaps it's not entirely in a global way, but enough people are starting to and um, cultivating this shift within them,
Mm-hmm.
that it's
Mm-hmm.
having a tangible impact in the lives of all of us,
Mm.
especially with the help
Yes.
of technology.
Well, that's true. I think that's true. I mean, I think that we are witnessing a rise in the power of story in ways that
Mm,
are not always positive, actually, but powerful always. I mean, I think, I looked at one of your interviews. I think it was with Robert Bonomo, and he was talking about the trickster moment. And I think that that's something I did resonate with, because it's almost as if in this moment where people are living in these separate realities, the stories begin to take over, right? And not always in healthy ways, but it but the good news is that if stories can become so powerful and so dominant, that they shape reality all
mm,
around us, then we can shape them back.
mm.
Yeah.
I think that's a very important part of the work that people are doing with coaching and with helping people rewrite their stories, and to
Yes.
put it in a perhaps in a more practical way of speaking, it's like learning to know what your subconscious beliefs are, what your which that would be your story in a way,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and so if you're not open to like nowadays, I'm recently I'm beginning to understand more my relationship with accepting help, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
if there is a part of you subconsciously uh, not accepting help, whenever help presents itself, you're going to have a hard time accepting it,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
and reaping the benefits of it, even if it's something that doesn't look like help, but
That's
it's
right.
energetically it is help. You will, so a kind of an offer or a whatever from somebody, and you will just say no, no, I'm okay, I'm okay, and
Yes.
right.
Yes. Yes. There's the that feeling that you can do it all yourself, uh, but also that you need to control it all yourself.
Mm.
Right. Yeah. And I think that giving up control is one of the hardest things for all of us.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I think I kind of got sidetracked, but my point was connected to how reshaping stories
Mm-hmm.
means reshaping subconscious beliefs. So there's
Mm-hmm.
stuff that is working in the background, some kind of software or whatever, that's some malware working in the background,
Mm.
and
Mm.
and learning how to turn it off and replace it with something better
Mm-hmm.
will definitely have a good impact in our lives. And that's another thing that I see. I call this show I call it Mystic Times, because I see
Right.
the same change that you mentioned, the same trend. And one of the things is this: how we are actually seeing that we can help each other and we can help ourselves by changing our subconscious beliefs. It's a kind of radical idea, even though it's already been. It's not anything new. I mean, people have been talking about it for hundreds, perhaps even thousands of
Mm-hmm.
years in
Yeah.
sacred texts, even. But we are learning new metaphors and learning to express these old truths in
Mm-hmm.
ways that we can understand today, and make them
Right.
actionable.
Right.
Mm.
I agree entirely.
Mhm. Very good. And well, things like what you do, with tarot, and not just with your readings, but also the
Mm.
information you share on your show.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't listened to everything, but I've listened to enough that I
Mm-hmm.
felt this affinity to
Good.
one day reach out to you, and I'm very happy that I did. You're a
Yes, I am
very
too.
beautiful soul. I love your laughter and how open you are to exploring all these topics. Just
Well, it's an honor to be
yeah.
on your show and really just a pleasure to have a conversation with you.
Mm. Um, Please, maybe we can just round. What's the word? Round it up. Whatever. I
Yeah, wrap it up.
wrap it up. That's the word. Thank you. We can wrap it up, but please first let us know where people can find you, where they can find your
Yeah.
book, and get in contact with you, perhaps for a reading or joining your I know you have a Patreon, so yeah, go ahead.
Yes. So the sort of central clearinghouse for everything that I do is www.tsusanchang.com. That's where readings are. That's where my classes are. Um, that's where links to my books and everything are. The podcast is called Fortune's Wheelhouse, which I co-host with Mel Moline, who is a brilliant deck creator. That is anywhere you get podcasts. But our Patreon page is www.patreon.com/Fortune's Wheelhouse. And I also have an Etsy shop where I make perfumes and cases for tarot decks. That's at www.etsy.com/shop/tarotista.
Mhm.
But really, if you go to just tsusanchang.com, everything's there in one place
Mhm.
and you don't have to remember all that. So
Yeah, and I'll be sharing all the links in the description. Well, I don't know. Do you have any closing words that you would like to leave the audience with, or something like that?
let's
Any
see. Let's see if Tarot
any
has any
final
closing
wisdom? Oh,
words.
nice.
Oh, look, Tarot says 10 of Cups. Follow your bliss, everybody. That's the nature. That's what we're here for in this life. You know, there's reality can be challenging for all of us, but it's our own choice to find happiness, desire, bliss.
Hmm. That was beautiful. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
You are really not a smelly. What's the name? Um, a smelly flower? No, that's not the word. Harmoniously smelling flower. In the
Something like that, fragrant,
a
harmonious
fragrant. There we go. Within
flower.
the crazy mud of human
That's
life.
right.
So thank you very much
Well,
for
thank
everything
you.
you shared.
All right. You take
All
care,
right.
Rafa.
Bye
Okay.
bye.
Bye bye.